When we are young, we believe we have time. Time to fix mistakes. Time to say what we feel. Time to love. Later, I believed that too. I spent most of my life on this old ranch, watching the seasons change, thinking my family understood my silence. But silence exacts a price. And some lessons only arrive when there is already more past than future ahead of us. My name doesn't matter much anymore. What matters are the stories I carry with me, and those I failed to live with the ones I loved most. If you believe that stories about family, choices, and regrets can teach something important about life, then subscribe to this channel. Here, we talk about the moments that truly matter, before it's too late. I grew up believing that life was simple. On the ranch, everything followed a rhythm that never changed. The sun rising early, the hard work, the tired hands, and the silence at the end of the day. I learned from an early age that complaining didn't put food on the table and that showing feelings was seen as a weakness. We learned to swallow what we felt and keep moving forward. When I started my own family, I did exactly what I knew how to do. I worked without stopping. I woke up before everyone else and went to sleep after everyone else. I thought being tired was proof of love. I thought providing for the household was enough. The ranch taught me how to be strong, but it never taught me how to be present. My children grew up while I was counting the harvests. My husband grew old while I was too busy to notice. I told myself that it was all for them, that one day they would understand my silence. But the ranch, with all its beauty, also hid me from what I didn't want to face. It was easier to care for the land than to care for emotions. It was easier to deal with physical exhaustion than with the fear of not knowing how to love the right way. At that time, I didn't see a problem with it. I thought I was doing everything right. Today, looking back, I realized that I began to lose my family long before I noticed that something was wrong. I was always told that a strong woman doesn't cry, that a strong woman endures in silence. And I took that as a rule for life. Inside the house, I rarely spoke about feelings. I didn't say, "I love you," because I thought my actions spoke for me. The food on the table, the clean house, the work done. That should have been enough. But a family isn't nourished by effort alone. A family needs words, presence, and attention. And it took me a long time to understand that. My children would try to talk to me. I would answer quickly, always busy. There was always something more important to do. An animal to tend to, something to fix, a pending task. I postponed affection as if it could wait. I thought I was teaching values. In reality, I was teaching distance. Without realizing it, I created a silent space between us. A space where no one knew exactly how to get close. Today I understand that my silence wasn't strength. It was fear. Fear of showing weakness, fear of making a mistake, fear of not knowing how to express what I felt. And that fear came at a high cost. The silence grew inside the house, like dust that accumulates when no one cleans. In the beginning, it was almost imperceptible. Later, it became heavy. When I tried to speak, I no longer knew how. When I wanted to listen, there wasn't much left to be said. Time passes differently when we live life too busy. The days blur together. Weeks turn into years without us noticing. I was always waiting for the right moment to slow down, to be more present, to have a calm conversation. But that moment never arrived. My children grew up fast. One day they were small, asking for attention. The next, they weren't asking anymore. I thought this was normal. I thought it was just a phase. I didn't realize that they were learning to live without me, just as I had taught them. Meals became silent. Each person in their own corner. I felt something was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. Instead of facing it, I took refuge in work. It was the place where I felt useful, where everything still made sense. The ranch never demanded words from me, only effort. And effort I had plenty of. When I finally noticed, the bonds were loose. Not broken, but fragile. Living together became a habit, not a connection. And that hurts more than a fight, because the absence goes unnoticed until it's too late. If I could go back in time, I would have stopped more often. I would have listened more. I would have understood that presence isn't being in the same house, it's truly being there. But at that time, I still thought I would have time. The first regret didn't come as a shock. It came slowly, almost whispering. A short comment from one of my children, a distant look, a dry response. Small things that, together, began to wake me up. I realized that I no longer knew their dreams, their fears, their pains. I was there, but I wasn't inside their lives. It was like observing someone from afar, without knowing how to get closer. I tried to change, but I didn't know where to start. I had no practice in talking about feelings. Everything felt strange, forced. Sometimes, I preferred to stay silent so I wouldn't make any more mistakes. That was my mistake. I waited until I knew how to do it perfectly, when what they needed was simply the attempt. Regret grows when we understand that we could have done things differently. That it wasn't a lack of love, it was a lack of courage. The courage to show myself as imperfect. At that moment, I began to understand that loving also requires learning. And I had skipped that part of life. There comes a point in life when the house feels bigger than it actually is. The hallways become too long, the empty chairs demand more attention, and silence stops being a rest and becomes a companion. That's how it was when my children went their own ways. There were no fights, no dramatic goodbyes. Just time doing what it always does, taking people away while we remain. In the beginning, I tried to convince myself that this was just how it was. That children grow up, that life goes on. I continued with the ranch routine, caring for the land, the animals, the house. But everything felt heavier. Not because of the work, but because of the absence of voices, of laughter, of small conflicts that used to bother me and now I missed. I started to remember simple moments that I let pass by. Interrupted conversations, ignored questions, postponed requests for attention. I realized that many memories I could have created never existed. And that hurts in a silent but profound way. The house didn't change. I was the one who changed. For the first time, I had plenty of time to think. And thinking brought regrets. I understood that presence cannot be saved for later. You either live it in the right moment, or it turns into longing. In that silence, I learned that unshown love turns into a void. And a void cannot be filled with work, or with pride. It only reveals itself, waiting for us to have the courage to face it. As time went by, I realized it wasn't just the people who had left. The words had left too. Everything I failed to say began to weigh on me. Simple phrases, bottled up feelings, apologies never made. I thought silence would protect me, but it only delayed the pain. I always thought my children knew I loved them. After all, I worked for them. I sacrificed for them. But love is not a guessing game. Love needs to be heard, felt, confirmed. And I only understood this when it was no longer within my reach. There were nights when I would sit on the ranch porch, looking at the open sky, and rehearse conversations that would never happen that way. I thought about what I would say if I had another chance. But life doesn't work like a rehearsal. It happens only once. The weight of untold things is different from any other burden. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but you feel it every day. It appears in loneliness, in longing, in the desire to go back in time. I learned that words have a right time. When the moment passes, they lose their strength. Even so, they continue to echo inside us, reminding us of what could have been different. And that is one of the hardest lessons that time teaches. Understanding didn't come suddenly. It wasn't a grand revelation or a major event. It came gradually in small details. In short conversations, in quick visits, in responses that were too polite. That's when I realized the distance wasn't just physical. It was emotional. I understood that my mistakes weren't caused by a lack of love, but by a lack of presence. I was too busy trying to be strong when I should have been more human. I confused responsibility with affection and discipline with care. On that day, I accepted something difficult. I did the best I knew how, but that doesn't mean it was the best I could have done. Recognizing that wasn't easy. Pride tried to speak louder, but time teaches humility. I realized that asking for forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of maturity. Even if not everything can be fixed, acknowledging your own mistakes lightens the heart. This understanding didn't erase the past, but it changed the way I began to see life. I learned that there is always something to learn as long as there is time to reflect. And that true growth often begins when we admit that we failed. Not everything is completely lost. That was one of the few things that brought me comfort. Even with regrets, there was still room to try differently. Maybe not to redo the past, but to soften the present. I began to value the small moments. A simple conversation, a short visit, an unexpected message. I learned to listen more and speak with more care. Not to demand, but to demonstrate. I understood that love changes with time. It matures, it adapts. It's no longer like when the children were small, but it still exists. And while it exists, it deserves attention. I started to show what I feel without the fear of appearing fragile. I discovered that vulnerability brings people closer, that sincerity builds bridges, and that it is never useless to try to love better. Maybe I won't be able to live everything I would like to, but I can live what remains with more awareness. This brought peace to my heart. The ranch remains the same, but I am not. Today, I walk slower, I observe more, I listen more. I learned that time doesn't go back, but it teaches. And those who learn, even late, find some form of redemption. If there is something I wish to leave as a message, it is for those who still have time. Time to hug, to talk, to apologize, to show love. Don't wait for the perfect moment. It almost never arrives. Life happens in the middle of the mess, the exhaustion, the ordinary days. That is where relationships are built or lost. Small daily choices define great distances in the future. Don't assume that people know what you feel. Say it. Show it. Be present. Silence does not protect relationships. It wears them down slowly. I learned this late, but maybe you don't have to learn it the same way. If you can, choose differently. Prioritize people. Work ends, tasks repeat, but time with those we love cannot be recovered. Look at your family today. See who is still by your side. Enjoy it. Don't postpone what truly matters. If my story serves for anything, let it be to remind you to live with more intention. Loving requires effort, but it is worth every attempt. And the regret of not trying is always heavier. At the end of life, memories gain more value than any achievement. It's not the possessions, or the titles, or how much one worked. It's the shared moments, the words said at the right time, the simple gestures. Today, I understand that what truly remains are the marks we leave in people's hearts. And that is built with presence, care, and demonstrated love. If I could summarize everything I've learned, I would say that living well is living connected. Not perfect, but true. Not strong all the time, but available. I accepted my mistakes, learned from them, and I move forward with more awareness. The past doesn't change, but the meaning we give to it can change. If you have listened this far, maybe this story is also an invitation. An invitation to look at your own life with more attention. To choose what truly matters. Because in the end, when the silence arrives, it is the lived love that keeps us company. And that is all we really need. If you've made it this far, I want to speak directly to you. Perhaps this story has touched some silent part of your heart. Perhaps it has awakened vivid or difficult memories. But if it reached you, it's because there is still time. Time to choose differently. Time to be more present. Time to love with more courage. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Real life happens in the midst of exhaustion, failures, and ordinary days. It is in these simple moments that the biggest decisions are made. If today you feel you could do better, that isn't guilt. It is awareness. And awareness is a gift. Call. Visit. Hug. Say what you feel. Apologize, if necessary. Love doesn't require long speeches. It needs sincere presence. If you've lost someone, honor that story by living better now. If you still have people around you, don't delay. Life doesn't demand perfection. It asks for intention. Small choices made today can prevent big regrets tomorrow. May this story be a gentle reminder. You can still write lighter chapters. With more truth. With more love. And when the silence arrives, may it find a heart at peace, knowing that you did the best you could while there was time. Take a deep breath, slow down, and choose a simple gesture today. A phone call, a coffee, an attentive look. These small acts build lasting memories. And it is those memories that remain when everything else passes. They silently light the way, heal old longings, and warm the future, always. If this story touched your heart in some way, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here, every story is told with calmness, truth, and feeling, to remind us of what truly matters in life. Leave a comment saying what this message awakened in you, or share a thought, a memory, something you would do differently today. Your story might help others, who are also learning, little by little, to love better. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video. Sometimes, a simple story arrives at exactly the right moment.